Oh, pleasant.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy with my current boss, the Prime Minister. Could I just make the point to the honourable? May I make this point to the honourable gentleman, which is that if he looks at the British Energy Security Strategy, which was published a few weeks ago, it sets out very clearly our commitment to a clean energy future, and he knows that our stated aim is that we will decarbonise the electricity sector by 2035, and we stand by that.
Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Speaker, the fossil fuel lobby at COP26, covering over 100 fossil fuel companies, fielded a larger delegation than the combined 8 delegations from the countries worst affected by climate change and the single largest delegation with over 500 delegates. Does the President not agree that while investment by fossil fuel companies in renewables is a key part of tackling climate change, it would not be appropriate for a repeat of this situation to occur at COP27, and the fossil fuel industry should not be given the loudest voice on climate discussion?
Here, here.
Mr. Speaker, I just point out that the presidency in any one year is not responsible for who attends a particular COP. What we are responsible for is the presidency platform, and I can tell him that at COP26 all corporates who participated were required to have signed up for the UN's Race to Zero campaign. They were committing to reach net zero by 2050 on science-based targets, and there were no fossil fuel companies participating on UK presidency platforms in Glasgow.
Sir Gurry Street.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I encourage my right honourable friend to continue to get the balance right between marching towards a green future and actually using whatever fuels we need to use in the meantime to keep the lights on in our hospitals, our schools, our homes and our offices? He's done a great job so far. Will he continue to get that balance right?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend makes a really important point. What we've always talked about is a managed transition to a clean energy future. This is not about flicking a switch off overnight, and I think everybody understands that, and as a government, of course, we have to make sure that we keep the lights on, we keep the factories and the businesses running.
Jacob Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the COP26 President recognise that fossil fuels remain critical in the transition to net zero 2050 and also in the production of blue hydrogen, plastics and power through CCUS projects like Net Zero Teesside?
President.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think my honourable friend is making the same point, which is this is about a managed transition. We want to ensure that we've decarbonised the electricity system by 2035, and colleagues will know, looking at the energy security strategy, it is all about transitioning to a clean energy future with a big push on renewables, on nuclear, on hydrogen.
We now come to Shadow President Ed Miliband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been reported the President is in the running to be Executive Director for Climate at the UN. I wish him well because he would do an excellent job in that post. Part of the reason he won respect at COP26 was for his commitment to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. Yet here at home, the Chancellor has created a massive loophole in the windfall tax to give away at least £4 billion of public money in new incentives for new oil and gas projects. Can you tell us whether he was consulted on this plan, how much he estimates it will drive up emissions, and isn't it totally at odds with the agreement on fossil fuels he worked so hard to secure in Glasgow?
President.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd just say to the honourable gentleman that the energy profits levy, to which, of course, he refers, is a targeted short-term measure. It has an effective end date of December 2025, you know, for any company looking to make any kind of future energy investments, they will have to factor in the risks of potentially ending up with stranded assets.
Ed Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, maybe he's got one eye on the UN. That didn't sound like a wholehearted endorsement of the Chancellor's policy. And he's right to think the Chancellor's policy doesn't make any sense. The money will either go to oil and gas projects that would have happened anyway, or incentivise new projects which will make no difference to consumer bills, will take years to come to fruition, and drive a coach and horses through our climate commitments. And what's more, Mr. Speaker, this policy actually excludes renewable investments, the quickest, cheapest, cleanest form of power. Doesn't it show the truth that on climate, he says one thing on the world stage, and the rest of the government does another here at home? And isn't it totally understandable the President wants to jump off the sinking ship?
President.
Mr. Speaker, I just say to the honourable gentleman, he doesn't get rid of me that easily. Can I just make the point to him is that he needs to look at what the government has done over the past few years. We've built the second biggest offshore wind sector in the world, and the reason that we are not dependent on Russian hydrocarbons, like some other countries are, is precisely because we've done that. We've had a big push on renewables. He talks about the energy profits levy. I would just say to him, please have a look. I know we'll have done this anyway, but have a detailed look at the energy security strategy. It sets out a very clear direction to a clean energy future for the UK.
Jameson.
Question 2, please, Mr. Speaker.
President.
Mr. Speaker, COP26 was one of the first such summits where there was a significant presence from and commitments made by the corporate sector. Over 7,000 international businesses have now signed up to the UN Race to Zero campaign, which commits them to reaching net zero by 2050 at the latest. The private sector will, of course, be critical to helping deliver on the commitments in the Glasgow Climate Pact.
Jameson.
Mr. Speaker, my constituency of Bracknell is blessed with several businesses of 10 employees or less. How might they be helped and persuaded towards climate neutrality when key decisions may not be in their immediate economic interest?
Mr. Speaker, I just say to my honourable friend that in fact there are many businesses, both large and small, which are committing to cut emissions because they've understood it's good for their bottom line and actually gives them a competitive advantage with clients and customers. And I would refer him to the UK Business Climate Hub, which is championed by the government and climate groups. Over 3,000 UK SMEs have already signed up, and I'm sure if small businesses in Bracknell look at the website, they will understand the positive impact of making a climate commitment.
SNP spokesperson Deirdre Broke.
Mr. Speaker, the President will be aware of concerns raised about aspects of biomass. So how does he intend to ensure that carbon emissions from this sector and businesses such as wood-burning power stations are reflected in the reformed UK emissions trading system, and how he thinks the COP commitment to protect the world's forests aligns with existing UK government policies for burning imported wood and the considerable UK government subsidies given to this industry?
Well, Mr. Speaker, quite a lot of questions there in one. I would just say to her that we have a very clear commitment, which we've set out, obviously in our legal framework, but also in the net zero strategy, which sets out how, through different sectors of the economy, we are going to decarbonise. She talks about forests. You will know that at COP26 we got a commitment from over 140 countries, representing over 90% of forests, to ensure that deforestation is reversed from 2030. And I can tell her that I've just returned from Stockholm, where I and other UK ministers held a meeting to discuss how we can try and push forward these commitments so that they're not just something that's written down, but we are actually seeing progress as well.
Trickett. President.
Mr. Speaker, in order to, and I answered this question earlier, but I just reiterate again that in order to participate on UK presidency platforms at COP26, all corporates were required to sign up to net zero commitments. And again, let me just reconfirm that we didn't have any fossil fuel companies participating on UK presidency platforms.
John Prickett.
Thank you very much. Well, look, the truth is that the whole process of transition is either stalled or actually in reverse. And we know there are powerful interest groups now in Downing Street saying that climate change is of secondary importance. But what's striking is the fact that when you look at ministerial diaries, they've met with representatives of fossil fuel companies 9 times more frequently than with companies representing renewables. Isn't it clear that this government is in the pockets of the fossil fuel industries, that it's been effectively captured by those corporations, and that explains the asymmetric way in which the government is operating in relation to the transition?
President.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government has not been captured by any interest, and I would just point out to him once again, if he looks at the energy security strategy, if he's looking for the direction of travel, he will see that we are looking to quintuple the amount of offshore wind we have, quintuple the amount of solar that we have in the system, and obviously we want by 2050 to have a quarter of our electricity needs coming from nuclear. As far as I'm concerned, if he looks at the detail of that, he will understand that what we are focused on is a clean energy future, and that actually is what we are delivering.